Hello, and this is Chad Everett Broshears, the host of Growing Up in the Wilds of Suburbia. Today I'm going to throw up the old medical and content disclaimer. Give it a second while you guys have the opportunity to read it. Please pause the video at this point if you are watching it when it's not live, and take a moment to read over the disclaimer just so that you understand exactly what the show is actually standing for and what it is not replacing. So with that, like I said, go ahead and stop and read all of the disclaimer and then move on. All right. So now let's get back to this main screen here. Okay. So that today's episode is episode 16, and it's going to be on how to accelerate learning. All right. I've been told many times that people that know me in person that I actually admire for their degree of intellect, whether it's on paper in a form of, a degree or something, or if it's in life experience. I've been regularly told that I'm the most intelligent person that they know. I don't feel that way personally. I don't recognize myself in any such way, nor do I brag ever that I'm intelligent at all. The only thing I ever do is tell people that I'm very interested. So when they say, wow, you know so much, I say, well, I'm just really interested. I have no interest in actually being better than anyone else in that sense or holding it over anyone. What I do is I may actually measure myself as any good chess player would do, is measure themselves to their opponent. Not that they're my opponent to overcome necessarily, but just so that I continue to strive for a higher degree of understanding. That's my motive. I'm absolutely ecstatic about knowledge. So I've had people regularly tell me this, and I'm going to tell you some of the secrets that I actually, or some of the methods that I use that people would recognize as being secrets. I don't think they're secrets. Just I have a different way of seeing the world. So I'm going to go ahead and throw it on out there. All right. So one of the first things is there's two minds that I'm going to reference in this video. The first mind is mind A. Mind A is one that is conscious. It's driven for fellowship and all of this, as far as being able to connect with others and all of that. But it's a clear mind, and it takes work to have a clear mind, initial work, after you actually have a way of seeing the world, a living philosophy on how to deal with things, conflict, overcoming conflict, and or driven for developmental solutions to every challenge that comes along. That's personally what I've chosen as far as my preference and mindset, my psyche direction, if you will. I really do appreciate solutions to everything that I involve myself in. And by the way, this isn't fixing anything. It's creating solutions to overcome challenges. But the context of fixing something implies something's wrong. And I don't experience a lot of things that are wrong. I experience things as lessons, like in class. When you're in class, they don't want to present a lesson to you to make you wrong. They present a lesson to you for you to learn and then become that much more proficient in that subject. Now, of course, if you take a test and you fail, you're wrong on the answers, but they didn't present it to you to be wrong. That makes sense. Now, for me, I see all experiences that are not accurately pursued as far as creating a solution to the challenge. I consider it a growing process and tuition to the lesson, just like tuition to your college. That's how I see it. Oh, I find that it keeps me from having to go into delusional belief systems like optimism versus pessimism. And if you guys are interested in finding out more about that, I've had videos where I allude to that subject, and I will have a series of videos that give you the cost and consequences of optimism and or pessimism, and why creating the division is more challenging than it is solution filling. So anyway, that'll be for a video in the future. At this point, though, this is how to declog your mind. Right. So your mind is actually a processor, just like anything else. Your liver is a processor. Your stomach is a processor. The saliva glands in your mouth are processors. Your mandible, your teeth, your tongue, they're all processors. So if you look at it from a perspective of a processor, we want to look at it from what it takes to actually make optimal processing. Now, oh, wow. There's so many directions I can go in physiology, but I won't do that in this video. I'm going to keep it inside of more of a direct connectable for multiple people rather than just physiology majors or people that are fascinated by physiology. So I'll keep it in more of the psychological realm, which is what most people will identify as being valuable because it's more relatable to a larger span of people. So we can use a computer as an example because a lot of people have computers and a lot of people understand what a processor is in their computer. Now, if you have a lot of applications running on your computer desktop or in the background of your computer, it slows your processor, and that's where you start to see lag in your processing. So your computer starts running slow. What happens is you have a lot of things running. Well, if you relate this to the human mind, what you want to do ideally to speed up your computer is reduce how many things are running. Well, in the human consciousness, we do the same thing. We have a lot of issues. Like say you go to the gas station and somebody says something that makes you upset. Now you chose to be upset, but that's for another timeline as far as actually explaining why you chose to be upset and how you actually made that decision, whether you recognize it or not. But as far as you do choose it, every experience that you have, you've chosen to experience it a specific way. Not everybody experiences it that way, and that's why sometimes it'll come off very outlandishly that somebody may not have experienced something the same way you did, like maybe a death. Somebody's died in their family. Now, if you're close to that person and someone else is equally as close, the perspectives may be different, and it may insult you that they don't feel the same way you do. Now, with this is the opportunity to recognize that with different experiences come different emotional experiences as well. So you have the event that takes place, and then you have the way you choose to experience it. Now, that's going to be governed by multiple different factors. It'll be governed by how your day has occurred for you at that point, how your life is currently occurring. If you're in a victim process, or if you are a victim, or if you are a champion, there's another value to the victim. There's another concept, and it's not just the value to the victim, it's a profile, and I call it the champion. A champion always needs something to overcome. So most of the time what you find is you become an objective with a lot of people that sit inside of the mindset of the champion. Like the victim always needs a villain, and if you're in a relationship with a victim, they like to villainize you, or they'll villainize somebody in order to play the role of being a victim. That's just the only way it stays intact. Now, you may not feel like you've been a victim in this scenario, but yet, or in that kind of scenario, but it's not usually portrayed to you necessarily. It can be portrayed to you depending on the openness of the relationship. But if the individual chooses not to enroll you in the conversation between victim and villain, because the villain actually sometimes doesn't know they are a villain. So they just feel like they're up to something they feel is good or righteous, or better for people involved. And they leave everyone in this concept. So they may be the crusader mindset. There's so many different profiles that we can play into, which are just character descriptions to the way that our mind is laid out. Now, all of this is important to learning because we have to unravel the sweater that's slowing down. So we can kind of also think of it like as a garbage disposal. For those that have a garbage disposal, now a sweater falls into it, you turn it on, it binds it up. You don't just give up on the garbage disposal, you have to get it unclogged, right? Water can still pass through, but it's restricted by how much how condensed the sweater is inside of that small space inside of the sink. So you have to pull that sweater out. Now, you don't normally just pull it out and it comes out immediately if it's really bound up inside of the blades of the garbage disposal or the mechanism in the garbage disposal. You have to actually slowly and patiently take it out. So this is the same thing with the mind. So I'm talking about the issues that people are not addressing that are slowing down their ability to compute experiences. Now, that's cognitive reasoning computation, meaning that it's where you can logically work your way through things based off all your experiences is what we create, and what we call common sense is what most people experience, and that's where we reference common sense. Most people have had these experiences and they have a base level of knowledge. Not everyone has that, by the way, because other people have chosen to cultivate themselves in other ways, or their family or their authorities, early authorities, chose that there was something else more important to guide them in. And that's not always a conscious choice. It's just the thing that they do because it's the way they feel is the best way, or the best way given their own limitations. And that's something also to unfold at another time. But for this broadcast, it's just to be very concise with the idea of what it reduces your ability to compute things and what other people don't have that challenge by. Another interesting experience that I'll tell you that is a gift of this perspective, or it's the reward for hard work in unclogging your processor, is that inner voice that regularly talks to you about things that you do that are wrong or right and all of this. And like this thing that you get, and everybody knows that they have it, right? Where they have an experience and then this conversation, this inner dialogue takes place, but it almost seems as if it's someone else talking to you and not you talking to yourself, right? If you really pay attention to it, it seems like it's another voice, someone else, but has a lot of your same principles and values, or all of your same principles and values, but it's holding you accountable or other people in your life accountable where they have not been accountable to that particular value system. That's your subconscious mind communicating with your conscious mind. So this is the concept of consciousness. I have exercises to actually give you an understanding of why consciousness, right? The evolution of consciousness, rather than just this thing miraculously showed up. There's actually a purpose evolutionarily for consciousness. But this is my hypothesis working into a theory for those that understand that I do participate in the scientific model. So I don't have theories that are just, oh, they're nice, it's just a theory, it's not a fact, blah, blah, blah. Don't worry about that. I don't get into that bullshit game. All right, so as far as the computer, the computing factor of your mind. If you play any one of the roles I mentioned earlier, whether you're a crusader, or if you're a conqueror, or if you're a victim, or if you're the nice guy or nice girl, right? There's so many different profiles that you'll play into, and it's unique to you, right? But it's also a lot of other people have very similar profiles. If you play that game, what happens is you have to start keeping a play in your head, because the only way for that particular persona to survive is that it be on stage and performing. So your life is the stage it performs in, and you become an audience member as well as a special guest on this or in this particular play. So it's almost as if you run to the back and you change outfits. So you're still the same person in the play, but you play different roles, right? And your persona can directly be related to the group of people that you actually play with, right? So one of my strengths whenever I was in adolescence, and then as I got into my very early adult years, was I was a chameleon, meaning I had a chameleon persona, which was accompanied by multiple different personalities, not direct like schizophrenia or multiple personality disorders, not like that, but I actually started calling it controlled schizophrenia or controlled multiple personality disorders, because it was actually a controlled conscious state rather than an uncontrolled unconscious state where someone else takes the wheel. And that's a clinical diagnosis direction, and I'm not making those diagnoses or even telling you that that's an absolute fact definition, but you can by all means look it up on Wikipedia or Google and find the actual living definition. Now, what I want to intend to tell you by this is that whenever I was the chameleon, I matched my group to my personality, or my personality to the groups, I mean. So if a group expected me to be funny, I played the game of being funny, which came with its restrictions and a lot of plays in my own mind, which meant that every time I dealt with someone, I always had to analyze. And I had experienced analysis paralysis regularly, or paralysis by analysis very regularly, where somebody would ask me something and I had to really conclude a really thought out answer to it. And it would get down to the point that it was really simplistically, really easy questions. And I continued to play that role of, I need to sit and think about this. Now, it never got so crazy as to whether or not I would get organic versus non-organic bananas. But it did get to the point that it got pretty ridiculous, where they'd say, hey, what do you want to do tonight? And I said, let me get back to you. I need to think about this. And then it would be a couple of hours, well into the timeline we had already talked about doing something, when I finally came to a conclusion. And basically, I was like the great thinker. It's perfect that the great thinker is a statue, because that's about as much action as I created whenever I was in analysis. But I did it because I had to weigh it against all of the different variables in play of what I did, right? You see, like I really clogged up my computer processing abilities, right? My computing abilities in my mind, because I had so many things in this whirlwind of assessment that I had to do before I made any actions, right? There was barely any water getting out of the drain of that sink, right? When that sweater was locked away, bound up in the grinder. So That's the type 2, or the B brain mindset of my model. The B brain mindset is the clogged or throttled down mindset, which means that there's so many different things going on in your head that are unresolved issues that you have created. Now, you have inherited or been infected by certain beliefs, but you still made those choices based off of what your mind was dealing with and how you understand how to deal with things, which is based off of your experiences or the experiences others have imparted onto you. Not always are they the absolute best directions or best processes in order to achieve something, but it's still what you know to do and how you know to do things. So the key to this in learning anything and learning it once is simple. Deal with the shit you're not dealing with. Start learning what you don't know, meaning that make every bit, like, start focusing on the valuable functional education. I have friends that absolutely, and I've fallen into this trap as well, where I would rather fantasize about how my future could go rather than put the work into where my future requires I go in order to achieve the fantasy that can be the dream. First a fantasy, then a dream, and then legs get under the dream and become the plan. But you have to get legs under the dream. That means you have to work on the fundamentals, the foundation. That's what you have to work on in order to achieve your desired result. So I have full programs for people that actually how to actually become proficient and achieve any of your goals and how to get paid for your training rather than pay for training. But getting paid for training is slower, right? Rather than paying for training. So it depends on how fast you want to expedite and the depth and guidance that you wish to achieve. But if you want to learn to be a better salesman, there's ways to learn to be a better salesman and get paid for doing it at the same time. And that's for any aspect of their skill set in order to achieve a goal. Most people sit around fantasizing all day and they don't deal with the fundamental challenges that they're dealing that are present in order to achieve their goal. All of the things that you are resisting putting effort into developing is what binds you up with all of the drama of everything else you've been experiencing, all of your relationships that have any value that are incomplete. When that person passes through the corridors of your mind, and they may just fly through like a shooting star, but when they do, you think about them, the profile you have for them comes with all of the emotional values as well. So if most of your relationships are emotionally charged negative or undesirable, then as they fly through, you're dealing with processing a lot of undesirable things, and that slows down your processor, but it also taints your processor. And you can taint it in many ways or imbue it, right? You can actually change the perspective. You could almost change the entire processor by continuous thought processes, right? So if you continue to think a lot of negative things about people, your processor starts to change to more of a negative processor. It doesn't mean that it stays that way. It means it stays that way as long as you continue to condition it to be that way. You can use the same analogy like exercise. If you want bigger muscles, then you need to stay in a specific rep range to a specific weight value, right? And the tempo values are varying as well. And if you continue wanting to be a big person or put on real muscle and you're doing 20 reps, you're conditioning in the endurance perspective, which changes the entire process of the human body in the sense that of how it develops its muscle. It makes it more endurance based, which makes you last longer, burn calories more efficiently, but the big muscle doesn't come that way. It's not the way the body works in physiology. Now, some people are a little bit different as far as their muscle fiber compositions, but so there's very few exceptions to that rule, but it's very few. So don't be foolish enough to think that you're the exception. Most people are the actual populace being measured, not the exception, but the rule. So if you spend most of your time avoiding completion to challenges because you believe that conflict resolution is something that is not necessary, or you don't know how to resolve conflicts, you are more likely to spend time avoiding things, because avoidance can be resolution in your own mind. If I let it go away, it'll just go away. Well, does it go away for you every time you see that person? There's an exercise for you right away. Say it's somebody you had a big issue with, a big challenge, something came up and you hadn't seen them for a year. No emergencies, nothing like that. You guys lost touch, right? But you were pretty damn upset before you lost touch, and you run into that person again 1 year later. Will you not remember the emotional dealings, the emotional profile you had with that person whenever you stopped communicating? Are you going to come up to them like a stranger, or will you come up to them as the way you remember them? As soon as you do, is there not the elephant in the room that needs addressing? You see, there is part of the processor that I'm talking about. You have that in your mind. Either you avoid it, hoping that they don't bring it up and hoping that they've forgotten it, right? This is where we play like as if we're the exception and everyone else isn't. If you think that they don't remember, if they were aware of it, say there was a big fight between the two of you, you saw each other and you were nice to each other and you said hi and all of that, and you don't want to address it, right? The issue. If you know the issue's there, you can rest assured they know the issue's there. And you're both probably trying to nice each other to death or to tolerate each other but not bring up the argument because you don't want it to blow up again. That's avoidance. That is not conflict resolution. Conflict resolution is a skill set. It's a learned ability for most people. It actually reduces the confusion that's the conflict stuff that's going on in your mind that's throttling out your ability to process things, throttling it down and restricting your ability to think through things and being able to learn new things. You're spending more time thinking about how to avoid certain things. You're spending more time thinking about the emotional impact from that particular relationship. And then when you walk away, is it done? And there's like a complete vacuum from what happened before if you've avoided it? Or do you get in your vehicle and start like replaying the idea, or get wherever you're going and keep replaying the idea when you think of that person of how there was something there that wasn't addressed, and almost wanting to blame them for not apologizing rather than addressing conflict, right? So that reduces your ability to process. That's one factor. The other factor is, how do you feel about education? Do you feel learning is something that you need to do behind four walls with a roof that has some sort of, acronym stating that it's a particular college or a particular learning center of some sort? Is that the only way you know that you perceive knowledge or learning? Or is it everywhere all around you at all times? Now, for me, it's everywhere all around me at all times, even in the undesirable times. That's actually, I focus on learning the experiences constantly, which means that I'm more present than the average person, because I desire more of the presence to learn through. So as I learn it, I allow myself, when I drift into the past or fantasize about the future, I don't chastise myself for it, but I look at how can I accomplish what I want in the future and overcome the challenges of the past. So in the scenario of two people that fought and just ran into each other, how I deal with it is I directly address the situation, but from the mature approach, which is all of the wonderful things about seeing the person. And then I say, that thing that we went through the last time I saw you, I've had some time to reflect on that and blah, 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 right? That's what I do. I ask them what their experience was, and then I tell them what my experience was, and I create such a safe space that we can openly share between each other so that we can resolve that conflict and we become allies again rather than potential enemies on the battlefield. I really don't have a lot of enemies on the battlefield. There'll be people that don't like me just because of the fact that they have preconceived notions based on the way that I speak, the way that I look, or if it's the articulate values or whatever it is. That'll all be based off of either what they feel that they are not, or from a past experience, maybe somebody had their hair done the same way that I do, and that guy was an asshole, so maybe I am too. Or, I've had people flat out tell me that they can't stand me simply because of the fact that I am, an attractive guy and I speak well for myself and I am in good shape, right? I don't think that way for myself personally. I consider myself just one with everyone else, not the esoteric Eastern philosophy one with everyone, but just one with everyone else, being that we're of the same species. And I don't see that I'm genetically gifted in any way over anyone else, or under gifted in any way than anyone else either. I don't play that game of qualifying for values and superiority. I don't do that. I prefer to know you because I can live my life through your experiences. That gives me more of that ability to process things in my life, and I stop the stories that slow me down. Because stories slow us down. The voice that I mentioned that we all have in our head, I have very infrequently. It doesn't show up very often. I don't spend a lot of time pondering or trying to plan out how a conversation should go. I just have the conversations. I do minimal planning because the planning really doesn't take much once you actually understand how to fulfill on your desires for what you wish to achieve. So if I want to accomplish something, I look at what I know. So there I'm digging into the past. So I'm not chastised for being present. I look at what I want to accomplish. I look into the past for all the experiences I've had that are relevant to the particular challenge or the thing that I wish to accomplish. And then I look at the future outcome based off of what I know about the past. And from that, I go at basically I prepare just as you would do any other scenario in life that you wish to accomplish something. So this movement where never focus on the past and or don't worry about the future, focus on the now, there's variables that becomes irresponsible by. And I hope that I illustrated at least vaguely what those responsibilities are or the values are by looking at the past and the future to actually understand what the present offers and how to overcome some of the challenges or to succeed in some of your goals. Now, again, as I said, I hope that this is starting to paint that bigger picture of understanding of how to reduce resistance in learning. So this is mastering learning, folks. This is really easy, but if it seems foreign to you, there's work to do. If it doesn't seem foreign and it's starting to click and it makes sense, there's still work to do. But the context to the work is up to you. If you say work is hard, then hard work means resistance to the work. And then that also means resistance to achieving your goal. So you're working against yourself. But if the work is challenging, that doesn't mean that it's hard. It's just challenging. That means that you are limited to your exposure experiences. Maybe your body isn't conditioned enough for the workload available or the tolerance level necessary to achieve something. But ultimately, it is still work to condition. That's it. It's not hard work. Every time you use the connotation hard, it means that you are resisting something. And that means if you're resisting something, you're resisting yourself. You're resisting your goals. So if that's present, it's time to get to work. And you unfold it just like the analogy I used for the sink with the drain clogged up, or the garbage disposal clogged up with the sweater. Simply start pulling the sweater out. Okay, don't be obsessed with the sweater being completely out as soon as you tugged on it. Take time. Right? If not, you'll have to reach out and have somebody else come do it for you. But if they come do it for you, you've not learned the skills to deal with it. You've just learned that you can hire somebody to take care of it. So with that, that's part of the reducing the throttling down of your learning capacity. You have too much of your mind scattered all over the place and need to actually get it focused. Oh, I have the ability for intense focus. I also enjoy taking things apart to its basis because it does bring me great joy, knowing exactly how things work and why they work, rather than being mysteriously vague to how they work and write it off as if it were some sort of, miraculous event. I've experienced no miraculous events in my life. Anytime that occurs, I actually know that I just don't know enough about the scenario or the situation in order to come to a logical conclusion to why something happened. So you see, if you write it off that it's vague, it slows you down in processing it as well. Or if you just completely avoid understanding it, that slows down your ability to learn it as well because you're avoiding. Now, the clogged or throttled down mind, we just go to work on it, as I mentioned. You start running a working tally on it. If you're having a lot of issues in relationships, say it's an intimate partner, like somebody very close to you, or your husband or wife, or your partner, and you haven't addressed a certain issue, it's time to address it. But it's time to address it with sincerity and authenticity, meaning that you approach it and say, hey, I don't want to deal with this anymore, and it's slowing us down. It's a hindrance against our relationship. Let's understand how to get through this. I don't care if you're in the middle of a huge fight. Being right kills relationships. It does. And being right's relative. You can be right all day long and no one else will agree with you, but if you're convinced you're right until someone convinces you otherwise. And that may be at the cost of the relationship. A lot of people do that, and most relationships end just because of somebody else's deep desire to be right. So there's so many variances in that, but that really boils it down to a truth. Most people deal with that issue. Then if you think that you're the exception to the rule, just consider how often you actually express deep desired love with your partner, where you feel unbelievably connected to the point we call it flow, where you feel like you're one with your partner. Very few people get to experience that. So try not to write yourself off as being a exception to the rule, because being the exception to the rule takes a lot of work. You don't happen to fall into being the exception. Most people think they are the exception, and also most people think they're smarter than the average person, which actually creates a void for what average is, if that were true. The truth is that there's an average level of people, and there's a few people that are smarter than the average bear, and that's about it, or average person in this scenario. Let's do that. So this is part 1 of learning at an accelerated level. So if you do not address what you're consciously dealing with, and you have a voice that's running like crazy in your head, or you're constantly, it's like an auditorium in your mind, it's time to get to work. If you allow your mind to continue to be deconditioned that way, because that to me is a deconditioning of the mind. It's not a conditioning of the mind for a desirable outcome. It's a deconditioning of the mind for an undesirable outcome. And in my hypothesis of this is what creates mental illness for a good deal of people that are not genetically malaligned with some sort of irregular brain tissue. I think there's a lot of that is conditioned factors that create the mental illnesses, because no one's there to help guide them through that in order to overcome challenges. So challenges compound challenges, and then it gets to the point where it's just, beyond rational thoughts. So it takes work. If you want a healthy mind, it's the same as a healthy body. You have to work it. You have to exercise it. For more on this, please comment in the comment section. I will be seeking out specific specialists in this area that can speak powerfully on this. So you can look for that in the future videos. In the meantime, I hope that this video has created a great deal of value for you. Please share as openly and as often as you wish to on your social medias, and as well as with your personal friends and things. You can share this through emails as well, or links through emails. So please leave in any feedback or contact information, well, not contact information, but feedback in the comment section below, and look for more videos on growing up in the wilds of suburbia. Again, this is Chad Everett Brochures, and the disclaimer was on the beginning, so take a moment to read it, and please feel free to share. I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.